Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining me this morning. This month's Tech Tidbit topic is going to be strategies for prompting using AI, which is really kind of if you're using and working with AI, kind of a way to make sure that you're getting the best results possible when interacting with AI to get them to give you what you need, what's going to be something practical you're going to be able to use. So our goals this morning in the short time that we have is to discover and, when you have some time on your own, begin practicing some of these strategies. And then we'll talk about what some of the best practices are relating to prompting. And then I'll give you some ideas if, as you are prompting and you want to take it up to the next level, some ways that are a little more advanced that can help you get even more out of AI than what you just typically do. I feel it's really important that we be talking about this, mostly because I really do believe that this is not a new fad in education technology, that AI is something that is really not going to be going away. Mark, my boss in our office here, like to kind of talk about how AI is never going to be dumber than it is today. It is advancing at such a rapid rate, and it is something that's going to be with us. And we really want to be able to make sure that we're able to leverage AI and use it to kind of harness what's going to make thinking even greater, even better as we go forward. And honestly, I think it's something that we should be exploring with our students as well. But that's probably a topic for another day. When I talk about AI, I would like to remind people that AI is really a tool, and great teachers have many tools in their bags of tricks. And it's just one of those things that when you know the right time to use the right tool in the right situation with the right group of learners, that's when a lot of the magic really, really happens. So it is I think great to use in many circumstances. However, there's also tried and true traditional teaching methods that are going to be just effective in some situations. So remember that and try to use everything that you've learned in the right possible moment. When specifically talking about AI as a tool, though, when are the right times that we should consider using it? And I like to harken back to something that I heard Ethan Mollick say one time when I got to see him present at an ISTE conference last summer, was that it's a great tool to use when it's better than the best available human to you in that moment. Meaning you don't always have kind of that expert that you would go to. And if AI can be that thought partner, can be that assistant for you, then that is kind of the time that we want to explore using that as a tool in that moment. It can be used to replace tasks that you find tedious, make more efficient use of your time. It can be used to amplify those things that you love doing. And I think of this in not just a professional sense, but also a personal one. And I use it. I was just talking to my wife the other night and told her, when I was talking about, things that I like to do, and it's made me a better cook. Believe it or not, if you would look at my history in Chat GPT, you're going to see one of the most frequent interactions that I have with it, besides if it relates to technology or education, is I ask it for recipes a lot, and it gives me some really good ideas for things. So it's just one of those things that when you invite AI to the table, it becomes a better assistant or a colleague for you in those in those moments. So how do we begin to prompt with AI? And it's this skill that we focus on called prompt engineering. And prompt engineering is a way of structuring prompts to make them better, and so that we become better users of AI as a tool itself. If you think about what are some of the most important criteria to include in an effective prompt, you want to make sure that you're being clear with the language that you use when interacting with ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Magic School, School AI, or any of the other generative AI programs that you're using. You're going to get the best results when you are clear with that language. Providing some sort of context is also really helpful. This is some of the background information, some of what's leading you up to the point of why you're asking the question. And then the AI is better able to place it into the right situation to give you the best result. Being as specific as possible. Sometimes I'll say, I need a list of ideas for a topic on whatever. And I find that, if I say I need 3 to 4, it is much better in giving me the best ones rather than a list of 10 random ones. If I say I need, I'm creating a presentation and I need 3 to 4 learning objectives, I'll say 3 to 4. I won't say give me a list of learning objectives, right? So then it gives me kind of what it decides are some of the best of the ones that it would have otherwise given. The other thing that I find too is it's not always great on its first response, right? And so the more that you interact with it, the more you clarify, the more you become more specific with those things. And being iterative really, really helps as well. So those are things, if you're not getting it, to consider when you're starting to make your prompts with AI. So I've worked with AI a little bit here as a thought partner. I like to think of it as a cyborg sometimes, because when you're interacting with AI, sometimes you say, I want AI, you to do this. I'm going to do this other role over here. But other times you're going back and forth and you have kind of this, it's like you're working with a colleague in a meeting, right? And you are using AI in your own brain at the same time. To develop an acronym, because what teacher doesn't love using acronyms, to help you think about the different things to include in an effective prompt. And so here we have this idea, it's called the CREATE method. And you can see some of the things from the tips on the previous slide, that it includes context, right? But it also includes a role. When I like to ask AI for recipe suggestions, I tell it to take on the role of a gourmet chef, not just, a cook, but, I want you to be as much of an expert as possible. It's like if you're asking for maybe some help writing IEP goals because you're a special ed teacher, you're going to want to state that, that the AI is supposed to take on the role of an expert special education teacher or one with much experience, because it's going to give you some better results because of that. Giving it an end goal, being clear what you're exactly trying to get out of that particular prompt. Considering an audience is really, really important. Like if I'm, a 5th grade teacher and I need to create something for my 5th grade students, I want to let them know that that audience is going to be 5th graders and not just students, because otherwise it might come back with some things that might be a little bit too high or too low for the level of student that you're working with, right? So be clear to the AI who that group of people is going to be. And then give it some tasks that you want it to perform, right? A list of steps that need to be included, a list of outcomes that need to be in there. And then it's going to make sure to include all of those different things. Likely it will go beyond that, but it's at least at a minimum going to make sure that you have that information that you're looking for. And then the last one, as kind of an optional one here, the final E, is to give examples. So if you have a format of a lesson plan that you like to use and you're asking AI to help you with a lesson plan on a new topic, you can upload that other one as a template and say, I've given you an example of the format that I like my lesson plans to follow, right? And then in creating the new one, the AI will be sure to follow that example that you give it. So these things really help to make sure that your prompts are going to be as most effective as possible. And I'm just going to give you a cooking example here, right? Because that's what I like to do. So you could tell AI, hey, write a recipe for chicken wild rice soup. And it's going to create a recipe for you. And it's going to be pretty straightforward. It actually looks pretty good. There's the list of ingredients that you would expect to find in a recipe, as well as how long it's going to take you to make and the number of people that you're going to be cooking for, as well as those instructions then that you find there. And it's pretty straightforward. It did a pretty good job. But then you could consider giving the create treatment to it to create a recipe that's going to be hearty and flavorful, giving it some background. You give it a role that you want it to take away. You give it the end goal of a detailed recipe. Then the audience here, which I didn't specify in the first example, is just going to be my wife and I. Just the two of us for dinner. So what's that going to do then when the recipe? It's going to take all of those ingredients and it's going to make them so that the portion sizes are going to be appropriate for two people and maybe a little bit of leftovers, because who doesn't like leftovers? And then the tasks that you're looking for it to include. So what I didn't include on this particular one was examples, but that's okay because that one's the optional one. And I'd like you to take a look then at the recipe that it made for a gourmet chicken wild rice soup. It upped the servings to 4, just in case, because it knows that I like leftovers. But notice what happened to the cooking times, because I told it that I'm pretty skilled in the kitchen and I don't mind taking time for those things. It takes much longer, right? If you look at the base of the soup, if we went back and looked at the other ones, where this one includes fresh herbs like rosemary and thyme, the other one include dried herbs. This one is going to involve making a roux, which the other one didn't have. It just said, throw the cream in there and mix some stuff up. And then you could see that the instructions here get a little bit more detailed in the type of vocabulary with the cooking that it's using, because it knows that it's going to be gourmet. And then it did give me some other substitution things because I had asked for that as well. So while they both do a pretty good job, I think the second one is actually a much better recipe for the way that I like to cook. And you could take kind of those same concepts and ideas and apply it to whatever use that you might have, either professionally or personally. So researching here about prompting, some of the most consistent things that I saw come up is what I'm including in these next couple of slides. So being, those first steps that I had mentioned at the beginning, clear, contextual, specific, and iterative, are just always important to keep in mind. Giving examples to the AI really, really can help. I've found that using instructions over constraints sometimes allows the AI to do things better. And if you think about it, like with classroom rules, right? You don't want 10 classroom rules that all start with don't run with scissors, or don't throw things in the room. You want to make them more of do respect classroom materials, and do practice scissor etiquette or whatever it happens to be, unless they're going to be something that absolutely has to do with safety, that you have to include those constraints. Then I understand that. Set the length of response. It is one of these things where if you're looking for something that you want it to be 3 to 4 sentences, tell it 3 to 4 sentences. Otherwise, you might get 3 to 4 paragraphs. And it might be great stuff, but sometimes it's going to be way more than what you need for that particular moment. Or if you are looking for something, like you're looking for it to help you develop one, I use sometimes in some other trainings this article that I had it write about underwater whale communication, using echolocation and stuff like that underwater. And if I tell it just to write an article on that, it might make it 1 page. But if I'm going to be using it maybe with 8th graders, I want it to be a little bit longer. So I have to tell it to make sure that it's at least 2 pages long. So be specific with what exactly the length it is that you're looking for. Be willing to collaborate, not just with the artificial intelligence itself, but with what I call human intelligence, or HI. Your colleagues, hey, I found this when I was using this with AI. I think you should check it out. It might work for you. Hey, what other ideas do you think we might want to include in some of this? And it can just really kind of help blossom some of those great ideas to incorporate into our teaching practices. Then experimenting and iterating. My default generative AI that I go to is ChatGPT, but there are definitely other ones out there. Sometimes if I'm working with Google related things, I'll go to Gemini. And, because that also is a Google product, and it's also a very great, what we call large language model, or LLM. But there's others out there as well. And there's also education ones. So don't be afraid to experiment with different ones to see if you get different results. And you might find, some people are more Coke aficionados and some people prefer Pepsi. That's really kind of the difference between some of these that you're looking for. Then, if you're looking to take up your AI prompting a little bit further, consider some of the language that you use in your prompt, or that you expect in the response. Should it be something that promotes safety or avoids toxicity? Asking it to be respectful can help generate the type of response that it gets, versus asking it to be academic might give it a different response. One of the things that's important with AI is, remember that it's always learning and training, but it needs those feedback from human beings. So when you sometimes see the prompts that you do, and then the results it gives you a thumbs up, thumbs down. Telling it how it did by just even giving that little thumbs up and thumbs down is going to lead to better results in the future. Or don't be afraid to tell it, hey, that was an excellent response, or that's not quite what I meant. I think I was looking more for something about, and again, it's going to lead to that better training that it's going to have. Also, when I am prompting too, I use AI to help me with my prompts. So don't be afraid to say, hey, what did you think of this prompt? Is there a better way that I could word that to get better results? And it will probably tell you, oh, if you said it this way instead, you're probably going to find something different. So don't be afraid to ask it for some of those things too. Then one of the things that AI has been used for when it comes to education is the development of different large language models, is really what they are. But these products have gone through what's called supervised fine tuning. So in other words, when you take an educational AI program, and I'm sure many of you have probably heard of Magic School or School AI, the other ones on here are EduAid AI and Brisk. They've really been, by the creators of these applications and these softwares, are educators, and have gone through and fine-tuned so that basically, instead of, like if ChatGPT is everything that's possibly out there that it can look at, it's taking and making sure that the data set that's going to be used in these particular models is going to focus solely on educational content and give you educational results. So because of that fine tuning, it's going to be more specific to the task that you might be looking for. So I really am excited about these different applications that are out there. Most of them offer what I call freemium plans, meaning there's certain amounts that you can use for free before you then have to pay for them. And I found for most of them, the free versions are more than adequate for, I would say, 90% of the things that I would want to do with them. Then sometimes it's not a bad idea also, if you're kind of working on developing something and you're not quite sure in your brain how it should all play out and work, is do what's called the critical thinking mode. This is not my idea. It comes from a guy I met named Paul Ivers from Ornell. And what he does is he asks AI to question him, right, about a particular topic or an idea that he has. And then the AI really kind of works with that person to pull out the creativity, the ideas, perhaps some, more clarification to get the end result of what they're looking for. And has a great assignment or an example that's on here from Paul. When I share out the slide deck later, you'll be able to click on that example and take a look at it. Some really cool stuff. In the kind of under the hood AI world of things, there's something called temperature. And what temperature refers to is how creative or how random do you want the AI to be in its response? So if you tell it, hey, I'm looking for either less or a moderate or more highly creative responses, it is then under the hood, when you tell it that, it's telling itself, okay, I'm going to change the temperature here on this. If you want it to be something with very high temperature, then it's going to be more random and it's going to be more creative in the types of responses that it gets. But if you turn the temperature way down and tell it to be less creative or to be factual, it's going to give you just perhaps that one correct answer that you're looking for. But you have to tell it that. Otherwise, it's going to try to guess at where you want that randomness and that creativity to be. Another thing to consider is, are you looking for AI to be a thought assistant, where you designate certain tasks for it to do the heavy lifting for, and then it gives you that work and that feedback? Or do you want it to be a thought colleague, that is working alongside you and with you and helping to enhance ideas you already have, or offering feedback to make what you're suggesting even better? Um, a couple of other ideas that to consider would be to create templates for prompts that work really, really well. So when you find that particular prompt, to include placeholders in there. So if it's something that you always come back to, maybe it's like lesson planning and stuff, where you put the placeholder in could be the name of a unit, or it could be a standard that you are trying to align that particular assignment or lesson plan to. And those placeholders work really well then, because you can just go back to it and swap that out for the other stuff. And then even keeping a journal of what worked or what didn't work and what you should try to do differently next time are all some other good ideas to take a look at. We're getting near the end here, because we're getting near the end of time as well. And I wanted to always leave people with just as much information and resources that I can possibly go to. Because if you're always looking to dive a little bit deeper, there's some great resources here on this page as well to dive into and take a look at. A couple that I would highlight would be the ones from Eric Kurtz. Eric Kurtz has this blog that and website called Control Alt Achieve, and he has some great ideas all the time. Always very practical, easy, straightforward, understanding stuff that are on there. Another one that I would point out as well, if you're looking for anything about special education or assignment modifications or considerations to include in your prompts, if you would like more for about disability prompting, the Groovy prompts here for assignment modifications, and the one from John Fila about dis and ability prompting considerations are really awesome. And I would take a look at those. All right. Finally, I'd just like to always give a shout out here to a podcast that I'm co-host of along with David Berner from Southwest West Central. If you aren't following our podcast, you should. We talk a lot about education technology on our program. So that's really what I have to share with you here today. I'm just going to go back really quick to the first slide, simply because it has a link here to this presentation. But when I send out and post the recording, I'll also make sure to include you guys as well.